we're going to talk about the fact that how interviews happen for students at various stages. So when you're in class 9, you start applying for school councils, I'm saying security councils. You apply for school councils, for leadership positions, etc. And so it's so important that you learn how to grab those opportunities. Then when you get to high school, little more in high school, then you all start thinking about, oh, we need to do profile building. So let's do some internship programs, let's do some extra learning programs. So all of those come with interviews. Then when you finally apply to your colleges and universities, in today's world, when it's become test optional in a lot of colleges, when the extracurricular is all online, colleges don't really have a way to evaluate how much students are doing. Interviews become the way that they assess you on how deep is your thought process, how accomplished are your accomplishments, and how serious are you as a candidate. So it's become very important. Also for a student, they go through various kinds of interviews. So you go through interviews where it could be an in-person interaction, it could be an online interview, it could be a video essay interview, it could also be an interview where you're part of a group discussion, where you're evaluated. It can also be an interview where there is a panel who is interviewing you. So all these are various kinds of interviews that a student goes through. But remember, these tips and tricks, if you manage to learn well and start to practice them in your life, will allow you to succeed every time you put yourself out there, and will also ensure that you present the best version of yourself. So let's see, what are these tips? So number one, time. We've all been told by our teachers, by our parents, by our mentors, that time is of great importance. So for a student, it is very important to make a careful note of the day, date, and time of the interview so that there's no confusion at all. Make sure you are punctual. Now, when you are punctual, what does that ensure? It shows you have integrity, you are disciplined. It also shows respect to the person who is interviewing you. So you start off making a great impression even before the interview has started. What is number two? Equipment. Now, earlier on, equipment was a big no-no in our lives, and everybody complained about the fact that the younger generation is constantly on their equipment. But in today's mad world, equipment has become the most important part of our lives. So it's very important to ensure to check what platform your interview is on. Familiarize yourself with that platform so that at the interview day, you're not struggling with your camera not working, with your mic not working, with you not being able to log in on time. The second most important thing, make sure all your equipment is well connected and is charged. So you don't want to be speaking a really important point and making a great impression and then your charge going to zero. So, the fact that we have done so many of these workshops, but still, I'm actually going to share this with you here. My computer is actually charged to 100%, but I still have my charge plugged in. So these are small tips that you need to make sure to ensure that your equipment is working properly. And one last very important tip, please close all other browsers except the platform that is being used for the interview. So you don't want social messages being sent to you. You don't want all your friends groups sending celebratory birthday greetings to someone, and you don't want news coming in that you react to or it unnerves you. So empty out all your browsers and only use the platform that is being used for that particular interview or interaction. The next one, grooming. Now, students often wonder that what is the correct approach to this. So, both Catherine and I believe that as students, you have the right to decide the look that you want and how you want to present yourself. So this means that if you want to dye your hair blue because you think that expresses who you are, sure, go ahead and do it. But on the day of the interview, make sure that blue dyed hair is groomed really neatly. So you can choose the look that you want, but ensure that you are presented in a manner that is tidy, well-groomed, and well-presented. Also, it's always better to be more formally dressed than more casually dressed. But again, you have to be dressed according to the occasion. So, if you want to apply for, say, the sports program of a school or a college or a team, then it doesn't make sense to show up there in your school blazer with a tie. But if you're representing your school at a conference or a convention, then it's important that you dress, in a tie with the lapels, with the collars showing, with any marks of your school that you wear, any badges of honor that you have. So grooming is a personal choice. Dressing is a personal choice, but grooming is a given. You have to be well presented, neat, and clean, always. Okay, this is a big one. And this is a secret that Xtraview has created to help students with. What are these 3 Ps? So the first P is prepare. Students, a lot of times we think we can wing it and we think, oh, it's only an interview. Oh, you only need to talk. Oh, we don't need any preparation. And that's the first and biggest mistake that you make. When you prepare well for an interview, it arms you with information that you can talk about in a confident manner, and it sets the stage for you to succeed. So the second P after prepare is practice. And we've all heard this saying, practice makes perfect. And it's really true. Once you have prepared all your material, whether it's in a written format or it's in your head, please practice. Practice in front of a mirror, practice with a friend, practice with a mentor, practice with your parents, but practice. When you practice, this allows you to try different styles of speaking. This allows you to try using words which might not be familiar with you. And this practice gives you the confidence to then go out and present yourself in a winning sphere. What is the last P of this 3 Ps? Something that we like to call pre-research. Now, pre-research is of 2 types. The first is when you need to research or pre-research before your interview about the college or the program or the company that you're applying for. What happens when you do this? So when you do this, you are able to understand their mission, their vision, and align attributes in your own personality, which make you seem a perfect fit. The second thing you need to pre-research is the role. And the best way that I can explain this to you is by saying, imagine this. In one instance, you're applying, excuse me. This is what happens when you do back-to-back webinars. In one instance, you're applying to be part of the editorial board of your school magazine. Now, in that, what is it that they want to see? They want to see that you're a good team player. They want to see you can deliver to deadlines. They want to see that you're not afraid of receiving criticism, because every time you write a piece, you will have constructive criticism come your way. You will have the editor tell you that, change this around, etc. And the last one would this be how creative you are, how passionate you are about writing. This is one instance. Now, on the other instance, if you're applying to become the head boy or head girl of your school, what then do you people want to show about yourself? You want to show that you're motivated. You want to show you can deliver to deadlines. You want to show that you can get people to work with you. You're a team player. You want to show that you are good with people, so you can work well with the school management, with the teachers and your peers as well. And the last, you are not afraid to take up challenges. So have you seen the subtle nuances and differences that you can put forward when you are presenting yourself in an interview if you have pre-researched both the organization and the role, or the college and the course you're applying for? So in this way, when you prepare, practice, or pre-research, there is nothing that can stop you from succeeding.
So in that last slide, Kavitta talked us through that secret of the 3 Ps. Here's another important secret, little known, about interviews and communication. When we are communicating with other people, the words that we use actually are not the most important part of our communication. Instead, it's our body language. And research and studies have been done which show that the audience or the person that you're speaking to pays about 90% of their attention to your body language, as opposed to the actual words that you're using. So what is body language made up of? It's made up of your posture. It's made up of your gestures, the way that you're using your hands. It's made up of your facial expressions, and even things like tone and voice, right? Basically everything aside from the words that you're using is your body language. And so what is the ideal body language that you should maintain during an interview? And some of these apply whether you're online, whether you're in person. So things like posture. Posture is really important. That's why in that centering exercise, I asked you guys first to sit up nice and tall, because I think it's important to always be sort of aware of your body and of your posture. When you're going into an interview, you want to make sure that your shoulders are square, they're dropped, you're standing or you're sitting tall in the case of a virtual interview. Your head is sort of stacked right on top of your shoulders. You're not off to the side, looking down, shoulders slouched forward. Right? Even as I'm sitting here, you can't see my full body, but you can tell when I'm sort of closed in, as opposed to being open and expressive to this communication. So when you have proper posture, that helps to convey poise. It helps to convey confidence. Before words have even come out of my mouth, I've already given that impression to the person I'm interviewing with. So that's number one, your posture. Number two is eye contact and facial expressions. So you should make sure that you're maintaining good eye contact when it's an in-person interview. If it's virtual, it means looking at the camera as well. So you're not looking down, you're not glancing away, you're not checking your phone constantly, right? You're engaged and you're connected with the person that you're interviewing with through your eye contact. It also means smiling. So you don't need to have a smile plastered on your face the whole time, because that will come across as sort of forced and artificial, but you should smile when you introduce yourself, when you meet someone, even if someone says a point that you agree with, if someone tells a joke, it's nice to just have a smile. It makes you seem more pleasant, more agreeable, and again, more open to the communication and the conversation that you're having. You see my cat here also smiling at us. In the case of an in-person interview, you should also think about the greetings that you're going to offer. So these days, not everyone is comfortable with a handshake. I would say that usually you can wait to see if the person first extends their hand for a handshake. And if you are comfortable, then by all means, shake their hand. It shouldn't be a very loose and limp grip, but it also shouldn't be so tight. A good firm handshake is always a good rule of thumb. If you are not comfortable shaking someone's hand, then again, these days it's perfectly appropriate to just offer namaste, to hold your hand over your heart, just something that really acknowledges the other person and acknowledges, that they've taken the time out to meet with you and to interview you. And that sets a very good first impression to have that initial, that initial greeting. Speaking of use of hands can be really effective in gestures that you're using during the interview. And especially if it's a virtual interview where they're really only seeing a small portion of you, your gestures become all the more important in helping to convey your points. So you can use your hands to emphasize certain things. You can use them to lay out lists of different things. You can use it to sort of show how you've divided work, really to help kind of underscore what you're saying. But your hands should not be distracting. So they shouldn't be flailing all over the place in such a way that it distracts from your message. You shouldn't be playing with your hair. You shouldn't be touching your face, fidgeting with your hands, biting your nails, wiggling a pencil. Any of this sort of fidgeting is distracting to the person you're speaking with. It also gives the impression that you may be nervous, which isn't an impression you want to give in the interview. So use your hands, use them effectively, but make sure that they're also not distracting the viewer. And finally, through your body language, you should showcase that you are open to conversation and open to communication. So again, that means don't have your arms crossed in front of your chest, don't have your shoulders caved in, no looking down, sitting up nice and tall and facing the person or facing the camera that you're engaging with to show that you're really excited to be there and eager to commence with the interview. A secondary part of body language is tone and voice. So again, it's not necessarily the words that we speak, but how we speak them. Imagine that if when I was giving this presentation, I was just speaking like this the whole time in this monotonous voice, you would probably get pretty bored. You would probably leave the presentation. So tone, emphasis, voice, all of these are really important and effective tools that you can use. Things like emphasis. When you put emphasis on certain words, it allows people to bring their attention and their focus to their words, and therefore allows you to help convey the message that you want to convey. Other things like pauses. When we're using pauses in between speech, it allows someone to absorb the idea or the message that we've just stated before you move on to the next point. And sometimes, if it's an appropriate setting, like you're giving a speech or it's something that has a little more gravity or a little more depth to it, you could even employ silence. So when you take that longer pause or that longer break, it serves to really drive the idea home and once again, bring emphasis to what you're trying to share and what you're trying to say. Volume is also a really important part. Volume and pace, let me add. So volume and pace are also important considerations when we're speaking and when we're in interviews. So On the one hand, you don't want to be so quiet that people can't understand what you're saying. You also don't want to speak so quickly that people can't understand. You also don't want to be the loudest person in the room. So it's about finding that middle ground in between where you are articulate, you're clear, and you're understood through the volume and the pace that you're using. When we use these different tools like emphasis, pauses, tonal variation, all of that can help to make our words work for us. So it's not just about what you say, but how you say it in conveying the message that you are trying to share. Next, coming to this point about humility. So no one likes a braggart. It's just a part of our human nature. I think that we don't really want to surround ourselves with people who think so highly about themselves and can only talk about their accomplishments and how wonderful they are. We want to be surrounded by people who are modest, who are humble. You know, that's the kind of person that generally you would want to be with, and also generally how one wants to be seen. But then you might be questioning, how in an interview can I still maintain this air and this sense of modesty and humility while talking about what I've done, while showcasing my achievements, you know, being able to share this information in a way that doesn't come across as bragging. So a few tips for that, for how you can balance, you know, showcasing accomplishments while still maintaining humility. One of them is to be sure to keep the emphasis on the hard work that you've done. So often I think there's a tendency, especially if we're complimented on something, to kind of dismiss it and say, no, it was nothing. That was so easy. I hardly had to work for that. In an interview, rather than saying that, rather than saying, oh, it was so easy for me to become head girl, or saying, oh, it was so easy to fundraise those 3 lakhs. Talk about the hard work and the effort that you did have to put into that. Because when you do talk about that effort, without, obviously you don't want to overdo it, you don't want to overplay it, but when you're honest, when you're authentic, when you're sincere about the time, the energy, the effort that did have to go into what you've accomplished, then suddenly it seems like it was well deserved, because we can see the effort, we can see what led to your success, as opposed to you saying, I'm just so lucky, or I'm so good at what I do that everything that I do, everything that I touch turns to gold. So acknowledge that hard work, acknowledge that effort. Similarly, you should express gratitude and give credit for where it's due. So if you did have a team that was helping you along the way, absolutely make sure that you're acknowledging them. Rather than, you know, saying things like, I couldn't have gotten to where I am today without my team, or even things like, I'm so thankful to my parents, to my teachers who have really helped and guided me along the way. That immediately shows, through the sense of gratitude, it shows your humility as well, because you're acknowledging that it wasn't just you, that it was very much either a collective effort or that it was the help of other people to help you accomplish what you did. And finally, the last piece of advice on this one is to own your success. Don't try to downplay it. Don't try to diminish it, but make sure that you stick to the facts. Because when you stick to factual information, then automatically people see the hard work that you've done. So for example, rather than saying, since I became head girl, the school is so much better, you could try saying something like, since I've become head girl, student participation is up in many activities. And in a recent student survey, 40% of students said that they felt that the school had a more lively atmosphere. Right? When you're talking about what you've done and what you've accomplished, then automatically we can see your success and we can see your accomplishment without it sounding like it's bragging at all. And so this is important, that you do feel comfortable sharing your accomplishments, but also doing it in a way that will come across with an air of humility and that won't sound like boasting or bragging. All right, our next important point is to listen to the question. So in order to be a good speaker, you also need to be a good listener. You need to be tuned into your surroundings, and you need to listen closely to the questions being asked. And sometimes this can be hard, especially if you're nervous going into an interview, which is perfectly normal, right? Everyone feels a little bit of the jitters. And so you've likely prepared before the interview, you've practiced your responses and what you would say in case someone asks this. It can therefore be easy, you know, to quickly hear the question and then quickly want to get your response out just to make sure that you've covered everything and all of the information is there. But the risk of this is that sometimes you can give your pre-formulated response, which isn't actually the ideal response to the question being asked. So I'm going to give you a common example that comes up. Sometimes a college or a university in an admissions interview will ask, why are you interested in our school? And so there you might have done all of your research, have all of the answers for the classes and the professors and the campus and everything that you know about the school, and you want to pour that all into your answer, which is great for that question. If, on the other hand, in the admissions interview, they ask, why are you a good fit for our school? And again, you just launch into, here's everything about the school that makes it so wonderful and why I want to be there. you've not fully answered the question, because while they sound similar, they're fundamentally two different questions. Why do you want to go to our school? Can be about the school. It can showcase the work you've done. And what about the school draws you? Why you're a good fit is not only asking what is it about the school that interests you, but also what is it about you, yourself, your missions, your values, your future goals that makes you an ideal candidate for our school? And what are you going to bring to the table? What are you also going to contribute to our community? So again, if you just tell them everything about their school that's so wonderful, it leaves them wondering, okay, but why do we also want to have you in our incoming class? So making sure that you're really tuned into what the interviewer is asking. And then if need be, you adapt your responses accordingly. So be prepared in the interview that you will have to think on your toes, that the answers that you've prepared might not be an exact fit for the questions being asked, but that's okay. Because if you've prepared, if you're focused, if you're there and present in the moment, then you'll be great. And you will be able to respond to those questions on the spot. With that, Kavitta, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks. And also keeping in mind that we have 15 minutes left for this interview, and we have a whole host of questions we want answered from the questions you sent us. So I'm going to quickly take you through etiquette and one last slide, and then we get to the questions. So on etiquette, a lot of students sometimes worry on what is the right way to address people when we start an interview. So remember, being formal is always more appropriate. So it's always right to address the person as Mr. or Miss, ma'am or sir. However, if they turn around and ask you, please use my first name, then go ahead by all means and use their first name. But to be more formal is better than being very casual. Also, it's very important to start with appropriate greetings and salutations. So it's important to note that after 12, you do not say good morning, for example, small things which an interviewer is assessing you on. And also what is appropriate in terms of thank yous, please, sorry, excuse me. Simple things that we know, but sometimes we get either very nervous or we forget to make it a part of our interview etiquette. Also, it's important to thank the interviewer for their time. At the end of the conversation, always say, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. It just leaves that interview or interaction on a great note. And the last thing we want to tell you is, you know it, you've got it. So relax, breathe, relax, smile. This confidence in your own ability, and this comes through everything that we've said, the 9 points before. If you do all of this, then you're confident, and that confidence comes through in the conversations. And that creates a winning attitude, which makes you the most irresistible candidate that is there in the pool of applicants. So that brings us to the end of this 10 tips. If you want to know more, we have a very exciting workshop coming up on the 7th of Jan, where this is actually a teaser. So these workshops are done in small groups where you practice what you learn, and there's lots more to learn from where this came from. So if you need more details, you could write to us at contact@xtraview.in, and we would be very happy to share that, to share further information with you. We're also offering this workshop at a very special price just for the Next Genius family. Ordinarily, this workshop is priced at 2,999, but it's priced at 1,999 for the Next Genius family.